Good afternoon. Hi, Kathy Burris here, showing up live with a cup of tea. Will you grab a cup and join me? It may not be a great time for tea. I know, I'm just doing this when it works for me right now. So, you know, if you've been watching the last couple of times that I have done a Facebook Live, that I share with you a little bit about the metamorphosis of a butterfly and why this little butterfly and the imagery and the metamorphosis of a butterfly has been so impacting to me. I've thought a lot about that this last week in my own journey, and I've shared a little bit about that in the past, but this has been a rebirth time for me in a lot of ways, personally, as a human, and as a woman, and as a wife, and as a mom, and as a grandmother, and as a coach, and everything else, every other role I can think of. This has been a rebirth time, a place of beginning again for me. I'll tell you more about that in the days ahead, but what I want to speak to is that when you look at the metamorphosis of a butterfly, and I know this is so not as professional, but when you look at this journey that they take from being a little egg to, becoming the caterpillar, to becoming the little jay on a leaf and the chrysalis, and emerging from the chrysalis to becoming the butterfly, that's a process that many of us have taken interest in and have watched and observed. And as we translate that into our own journey, we recognize that while the butterfly only experiences that once, we experience that multiple times. And I want you to think about that moment for us as humans, as we go through the cycle and we've experienced a moment where we're flying. Our wings are stretched, they're strong, we feel like we're the right person at the right place at the right time with the right stuff, and it feels good, it feels right, only to discover that somehow we've been reborn again into a new place. And new places are sometimes not easy. And that process happens sometimes because of a tragic event. When my daughter died, you can't help but be born into a new place. You can't help but experience something different than you've known it to be before. It just, I can't fully describe it here, and that's not my purpose of this, but a moment like that, whether it's as tragic as losing a child, or whether it's a loss of another kind, a loss of your health, a relationship, a dream, an expectation of how life was going to be at this stage. There's so many things that can propel us into a rebirth place, a place of starting again. And even if it's a good thing, okay, a job change, not a loss of a job, but you change jobs, that can change you, and that newness of what you're experiencing can propel you into a place of beginning again. And it feels hard because you've never had to do this before. Whether it's good or bad, you've never had to do this before, and there's a growing pain that takes place in that moment. That's a place of beginning again, and it's not always bad. Most often it's challenging. Sometimes it's exhilarating, but there's usually something that we have to let go of in the past. Something connected to whatever was before, whether that's a death of someone that you loved, or whether that's a loss of another kind. There's still a letting go of something. And it's often in that moment where we're letting go, where we're having to begin again and learn new skills, learn to use different muscles, learn to rely on God differently than we had to in the past. That's I'm not sure what the right word is for it, because it's a little different for each one of us, but that's a time when we have to stop and we have to get real about what we're experiencing, what the circumstances are, what's really going on in us as well as around us. And I think about the psalmist Asaph in Psalm 77. If you know me, you've heard about this psalm because God's used it so significantly in my life. But in that psalm, the psalmist stops and he's getting real about the situation. The first few verses of that psalm, he's, why am I here? What this I can't eat, I can't sleep. Things aren't like they used to be. I'm paraphrasing all of this because I've made it my own so many different ways, so many different times. But the awareness is that in those first 6-7 verses, he gets really real. In fact, he even, I think it's verse 7, 8, and 9 maybe, he gets real about how he feels about God in the middle of all of it. It's not always really pretty. And I've had people say, oh, you can't talk that way about God. You can't say things like that about God. But if something is holding you back from being honest with God, can you really be close with him? Can you really trust him? And he already knows what you're feeling. We're not being honest with him for him. He's God enough to handle it. We need to get honest enough about how we're feeling about this new place, how we're feeling about starting all over again, how we're feeling about this place of beginning again. But when we get honest, even to the point of being honest about how we feel about God, about what's blocking us from truly trusting him, it's only then that we can come to a place and say, wait a minute. And if you look at verse 11 and 12 of Psalm 77, you see this moment where the psalmist says, I will remember who God is. I will meditate on what he has done. And I will recall this. I'm, again, not able to quote it for you. Go look at Psalm 77. But there's this moment after he's been real, after he's said I, me, and my a whole bunch of times, after he's complained, after he's remembered what he doesn't like about his current situation or about God right at the moment, he says, wait, I will remember who you are. And you know what happens in the very next verse? This really cool thing. He says, oh God. And it's like his spiritual eyes are opened. And he sees who God is. Not his circumstances. Nothing's changed. Nothing in his life has changed. Everything's still the same. He's still at that same place. But there's this amazing thing that happens. And he says, oh God. And you know what? The rest of the chapter, he doesn't say I, me, or my. He talks about who God is. And he talks about the Red Sea moment, which is a whole nother thing, and we'll get into that, but not today. Go read Psalm 77. But that amazing thing that happens when we get real, we get honest with God, authentically speaking our heart, recognizing it's not for God we're doing this. It's for us. Because when we can take away those things, when we can give them to the Lord and say, this is how I'm really feeling. Until then, we can't truly get honest with him and remember who he has always been. We may not have seen him, That happens. But many times if we stop and get honest, we begin to see him, because he'll show himself to us. He'll show himself to us. So, why am I going into all that? There's so much more we could talk about that psalm, but I go into that because one of the things as a butterfly, as a woman going through a metamorphosis, let's say that, is that we need to come to a place where we get real. Now, we may have already done that, and if you have, terrific, great. I'm not going to say you have to keep doing that. Move on, go to the next thing. But if you need a place to get real and get honest, that's what Green Hope Coaching is offering. And that's one of the first things we're offering is what I call the Green Hope Gathering. And I'm hosting a gathering over Zoom. There's no cost to it. I just need your name and email address so that I can send you the login information and you can join us. Grab your favorite teacup with your favorite brew and take some time to get real and get honest about what's really going on for you. Now, I know you may think, a whole bunch of strangers, I don't want to tell them how I'm really doing. They're going to think I'm awful. Listen, girlfriend, first off, you don't have to share if you don't want to. Be there, come alongside other women. But I think what you're going to find is that we're a lot more alike in those ways. There's a lot more of us that have gone through the struggle. I have. You know me. You know that I have. And yet, when we're real and we're honest and we take time to remember who God is, really, what we see from there on is a pathway no one knew was there. That'll make sense when you read Psalm 77. Anyway, I hope you'll consider joining me. This is for girlfriends only. I'm doing that on purpose. I've had men join us, and that's fine. This is just not that time. So this is for ladies only. I'm inviting you to come to just be with us. And it'll be a Zoom call from your home Sunday evening, 7:30 Eastern time. You figure out your time zone. And we'd love to have you join us. But consider, if you wrote Psalm 77 in your own words, what would it sound like? I dare you. Take the challenge. Hope to see you Sunday. Talk to you later.